welcome to Diecast Restos. My name is Jason and this is the Matchbox 75A Ford Thunderbird. The T-Bird was introduced to Lesney's range in 1960 and it was replaced by the Ferrari Berlinetta in 1965. This example has been repainted a rather ugly red by a previous owner, covering over the original two-tone white and peach or pink. The front section surrounding the rivet post is cracked and the rear axle has seized. I'm hoping the windscreen is in good order once I strip that paint from it. You'll notice that the tow hook is broken and bent, and instead of repairing it like I had done for the 22B Vauxhall Cresta, I thought this time I'll go without it as it really doesn't suit the T-Bird. Speaking of which, here is the second generation Thunderbird, a 1958 model. The 75A, as mentioned, had the two-tone paint, and though the colour varied, it also suffered badly from sun fade. Early base plates were blue to dark blue, even a blue-green. They later wound up being coated in black. Wheels were grey or silver knobbly tyres on early versions, while later ones had knobbly or fine black tyres. During the post-threading process, I somehow managed to knock out the front left A-pillar. And then, to make matters worse, somewhat predictably, the fragile base plate fell apart while attempting to flatten it out. Not a problem, so I'll give it the old super glue and baking soda treatment. The glue in this case came from a tube which I had to wrench the nozzle off of, and then on the base plate. It's pretty important I get this right so the base fits back onto the model properly. Again, it is reinforced with the baking soda to dry quickly in multiple places. Next, the plastic parts are dunked in Dettol antiseptic solution, which removes paint from plastics impeccably. I pop the lid back on and leave them to soak until I'm waiting for my primed model to cure later on. Here I use my rotary tool with a rough grit attachment to sand down the nub of the tow hook. It actually works really well. I probably would have had to have ground it down this much if I were to attach a replacement hook anyway. Then I flatten it down so it's smooth with the rest of the base. Later on I'll repaint the base in blue, but it won't be a great match to this one in all likelihood. I buff up the two sets of axles with my drill. Then it's time to strip that dodgy paint. The Ford Thunderbird, also commonly known as the T-Bird, is a so-called personal luxury car that had 11 different generations spanning 1954 to 1997 and then 2001 to 2005. They were all front-engined and rear-wheel drive layouts. Initially they were two-seat convertibles with a detachable hardtop for Generation 1, but later different styles were introduced, including a 4 to 6 seat hardtop coupe, a 4-door sedan, pillared and pillarless coupes, and so on. The second generation entered production in 1957 for the 1958 model year. This model was also known as the Squarebird. It also is the version on which this diecast is based. This generation saw the 2 rear seats added, while it was available as either a 2-door hardtop coupe or a 2-door convertible. Now with that primer laid down, I scrape the paint off those Dettol soaked plastic parts. Here I started to see the split that ran right through the middle of the screen, which was a little disappointing, but I had to run with it. I then clean off the remnants of paint with soapy water and a toothbrush. The body is now coated with Tamiya TS26 Pure White, and the base in Tamiya TS10 French Blue. During its 2-year production run, Ford made a total of 198,000 Thunderbird Generation 2s. The 1959 model year had changes to the exterior ornamentation, in addition to the new engine, while the 1960 car had a third taillight added to the rear cluster. 1960 was a record-breaking year for the Thunderbird, with 92,000 units shipped. However, the 1961 third generation didn't quite keep track of those numbers, although figures were still quite strong. Here I've taped off the areas not being sprayed with the secondary tone, using 3M tape for the sharp edges and masking tape for the rest. This is Tamiya TS25 Pink. I opted for pink over peach just because. I've decided to try out using a Sharpie red pen for the taillights instead of my usual Tamiya X7. I've got to say it's been fairly successful. I then apply chrome to the rear bumper. This was often omitted later on in the model's lifespan. I used the narrower pen for the entirety of the headlight cluster, as the original would have looked. And then move on to that grille. This generation of Thunderbird actually spawned the personal luxury car classification, unique to the North American market. Elsewhere, I suppose the equivalent for the era would have been a Grand Tourer, perhaps? Right, so here are the parts laid out for reassembly. First to go in is the window unit. That presses on over the existing rivet in the roof. Once it actually stays put, I pick up the base with the front wheels attached and align it over the two rivet posts. The rear axle has no bulbous end, as the axle ends are partially covered by the body. Off camera, I reattach the screws. So here is the T-Bird in all of its former glory. I count 3 paint colours in addition to whatever its original shade would have been. Either way, there wasn't much of it remaining. The rear axle had seized up, and that tow hook was broken and bent. And unbeknownst to me, that window piece had split from the rivet in the middle all the way to the back. But of course, with that red, I was none the wiser. So this is what it looks like now. This is high up there on my list of transformations. It seemingly had a never-ending list of problems, most notably with that broken base plate and the unexpected issue of the A-pillar going walkabouts. The only irk with this for me is that screen, so my next bulk order of parts I shall get a fresh replacement. Aside from that, the rear looks great without the distracting tow hook, and the Sharpie has done wonders instead of the usual paint. It sits a bit higher now that the base is fixed, and the rear wheels also roll now they've been de-rusted and unclogged of paint. I'm glad I chose the pink over the peach, as it stands out a touch more. And the lines are nice and crisp as well after using that 3M tape. Anyway, that's all from me for today. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.